What could go right? I'm Zachary Carabell, the founder of the Progress Network, joined by my co-host, Emma Varvaloucas, the executive director of the Progress Network. And this is our weekly progress report where we look at some tidbits, some news that you shouldn't lose, but almost certainly would have missed because it's not usually news. Emma will lead us orchestrally through a series, or maybe more like chamber music, because we don't do a whole, full orchestra of multiple movements, of some stories of the week and the month and the year that she has found interesting, and therefore all of us must.
I think people are going to find this interesting. Well, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be completely bored. But if you are, don't tell me. Tell me that it was interesting. Let's talk about.
Lie to me, I promise I'll believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. And it's shaping up to be a potentially record breaking year insofar as low crime rates. Did a newsletter on this week. There's a lot of data to report. Usual caveats apply about we don't know if these trends are going to hold, but so far, first quarter plus of 2025 is looking very nonviolent, very peaceful, very demure, very mindful. So, first 4 months of 2025, we've had the lowest count of mass shootings with 4 or more fatalities. And some of these, like very specific definitions, are just how the experts define these things. So, lowest count since the first 4 months of 2006, which is the first year that data began to be collected in this particular mass shooting database. Shootings with at least 4 victims killed or wounded are also down in the first 4 months of this year compared to the same time period last year. And we've had 0 mass shootings that have occurred in public. And for context, there were 3 last year and a record 10 in 2023. So all these mass shooting data is down. We've had a homicide rate drop of a little over 20% in the first quarter of 2025. The crimes, he's sort of like the internet poobah of crime analysis. His name is Jeff Asher, and he has a great Substack. Considering the possibility that 2025 could feature the lowest murder rate ever recorded since reliable data became available in the 60s. So,
Wow.
previous record was 2014. And these would be if it does. I mean, if it does end up beating that record, it's a rate that was equivalent to the early and mid 60s when data first began to be collected. Um, Also, violent crime is down 11% again in first quarter of 2025. Property crime down 13.8%. So, just
Hmm.
yeah, lots of. It's a particularly safe time to be in the United States insofar as violent crime goes.
Hmm. Now, I'm sure there are many who will point to the new administration as a factor in that. It's not clear these things follow national politics. And there has been a somewhat of a mystery around the ebbs and flows of crime. So when crime radically spiked in the 1970s and 1980s, all sorts of explanations from decaying cities to rampant illegal drug use to white flight were all proffered as explanations. And then crime started coming down in the 1990s and 2000s and the aughts in every city in the United States, sort of irrespective of whether it had a Republican mayor or a Democratic mayor, almost irrespective of whether it had a city government that people thought was good or bad. It just everywhere crime started decreasing. There were some exceptions. Detroit lagged and Baltimore lagged and places like Wichita lagged and East St. Louis. But overall, things just got safer and safer and safer. And then the pandemic happened and crime rose everywhere. That was probably not so mysterious, right? Feeling a complete societal breakdown combined with the whole Black Lives Matter, George Floyd protests, questioning of police force. There's a whole series of things that kind of make sense. And now, without much change in actual policy, crime is coming down again, which is great. But it's interesting the degrees to which these things kind of move nationally and happen mysteriously.
So I have a little bit of info to challenge that somewhat because I was diving into this, and it is certainly true that the pandemic, I'm sure, had something to do with this. Up for debate how much the George Floyd protests and what followed, including a lot of community violence interruption programs that the Biden administration funded, how much that affect crime rates. But there is a professor at the University of Montana. His name is James Tuttle, and he has a pretty persuasive argument that the rise in crime and the the subsequent fall has actually a lot less to do with the pandemic and more to do with long-term societal trends that began in the mid 2010s. So
Hmm.
for him, that was like basically it's three markets that were mushrooming previous to the pandemic. That's fentanyl, firearms, and alcohol consumption.
Huh.
And once all three of those markets peaked, which they all did right around the pandemic, like around 2021, basically between 2021 and 2024, that's when the crime rates also started to come down, particularly the homicide rates and other rates that are kind of I don't want to say correlated, yeah, correlated with the homicide rate. So
Well, that's interesting. And it's
yes,
true. I mean, all the statistics point to people drinking less. But I mean, even the reasons for that are somewhat mysterious in the sense of
mm-hmm,
it's not like there's been a nationwide push to
mm-hmm.
reduce alcohol consumption. There's no been like war on alcohol the way there was a war on drugs. It just kind of it's as if everybody collectively decided, maybe we'll have kombucha instead of a six
Yeah, and
pack.
that actually, I mean, per your original argument, might have to do with the pandemic because when people talk about that, they do tend to throw around the like everyone kind of had this health craze thing during the pandemic that kind of stuck around. So they're all kind of intertangled, interwoven, interrelated. Hard to pull out exactly what's happening, as you're saying. But I did find that I haven't read that analysis anywhere else, and I thought that was very interesting.
Hmm, good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Next, let's talk about another Trump administration thing that I liked. Trump just signed it this week. It's in the model of other bills that have gone through various states and then also abroad. Italy is kind of leading the charge on this. So there's like this weird bipartisan field in which like far right kind of nationalist governments have championed this in as much as liberal and left governments. But Giorgia Meloni, specifically in Italy, was the one to get Europe going on this. That basically it bans revenge porn. Specifically, also mentions the manipulation of AI imagery and the creation of AI imagery around revenge porn. Makes deepfakes generated by AI that you must take them down 40 hours after a victim's request. I think this is a huge step forward. I know there are concerns around this insofar as free speech and whatnot, but I am very pro.
Yeah, no, I think the concerns are simply was the legislation written in such a way that someone's AI enhanced imagery that's vaguely sexual could somehow be prosecuted
Hmm.
as opposed to really clearly defining what revenge porn is. I mean, to some degree, there should be no real confusion about what revenge porn and deepfakes are in that, they are clearly what they are. The issue is, will some zealous prosecutor use sloppily written enforcement language and legislation to criminalize and penalize things that one should absolutely not criminalize. But yeah, I mean, I'm totally in favor of these are not things that should be just allowed to go, oh, well, sorry, oops.
It's surprising to me that we're in a world in which that was accomplished by Trump, of all people.
The take it down aspect of it, meaning websites have to comply with a request to remove something, is really, I think, the most important aspect of that because in many ways, there's a mechanism for dealing with this that does not involve prosecution
Hmm. Yeah.
and also doesn't involve the time that prosecution takes.
Right, exactly. Exactly. The 48 hours is fantastic. I mean, advocates for laws like this will tell you that the devil is really in the details insofar as how it's executed and whether police departments are enforcing this and how they're enforcing it and if it's clear to victims where they can go to get something enforced. So that's all going to matter, but this applying federally is an amazing first step for people that this has happened to. So let's thank everyone involved in that and Taylor Swift, who really got the momentum going originally, actually. So all right, let's move on from the US. Let's very quickly end with this kind of sweet item from Guinea-Bissau, because I love
Guinea-Bissau.
including countries that we've never spoken about on the podcast, and I'm pretty sure you've never included Guinea-Bissau.
I think that's
Um,
right.
Guinea-Bissau is holding its first art biennale. I can never say that correctly because I get confused between the American and the British pronunciation.
I think it's biennial
Biennale,
or
biennial,
biennial. It's either biennial or biennial.
biennale. Bi
Biennale. You could do biennale, yeah.
Biennale. Anyway, 2-year internet an international arts festival that occurs
It's
every
doing
2
it's
years.
doing it's doing its two-year art festival thing.
Yes. Why is that progress? It is a major feat for the country because the country has no art galleries, it has no art schools, and it doesn't even have, like, a framing shop. Or I should say it has nearly no art galleries, but definitely doesn't have a framing shop, per the New York Times article that I saw that in. And so, almost didn't happen. A bunch of funding from abroad at the very last moment was cut. They overcame lots of challenges, but they're doing it. And it's running through May 31st. If anyone finds himself in Guinea-Bissau,
In the next 10 days.
10
So,
days,
run,
or
run, don't walk.
in the next weeks by the time will be published.
Good for them.
But still, I think it's nice, and
Yeah.
I like hearing about people who are overcoming difficult circumstances. It's a great reminder.
Joking aside, art festivals are often an indication of some degree of civil society cohering and are usually an act of either quiet hope or quiet defiance of whatever ails society. Yes, there's plenty of examples of political art where they're also protest and they are standing against X, Y, and Z. But in many places, they are much more to be really cliched about it, a triumph of the human spirit, a way of honoring creativity over destruction, a way of honoring that spirit more than whatever is existing in the milieu at the given time. And so, hence why we are celebrating this in an admittedly not often talked about sub-Saharan African country
In a positive way, right? Because
in a
normally
positive way.
when they're included, it's to talk about war and poverty and disease. So
Exactly. So,
that's what I got.
cool. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Come back next week. We will have more interesting stories from obscure countries. That is definitely one of our brands. And thank you, Emma. Thank you for scouring the world.
Scouring the world. I wish I could actually scour the world, you know?
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for listening. Please tune in next week, as Zachary said, and thank you as always to the Podglomerate for producing and everyone at the Progress Network editorial staff that makes all of the behind the scenes work happen. But especially to you guys for tuning into us, hopefully every Friday.